This is the Teacher Principal Evaluation Data webinar for data collection. I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe and healthy. We greatly appreciate you taking the time out this morning. I know many of you wear multiple hats during these closures, are probably working in overdrive as things evolve and change minute by minute, day by day. So our office, as you well know, is the Office of Leadership Development and School Improvement. And our main goals are to foster and support the growth of effective leaders, also to ensure valid and reliable evaluations, and then to raise the quality of education. I've probably met many of you. I'm Ed Mitzel again, and we're in the Division of Career and College Readiness, which is under Tiara Booker Dwyer, the Assistant State Superintendent. And with me this morning is Dr. Lori Ellis, the Coordinator of Leadership Development, and you will meet Catherine Key, our newest member of the team, and she is our data analyst, and I will be passing the baton to her. This is her first presentation for the Maryland State Department of Education. She is excited to work with you and answer your questions, but just keep in mind that this is her first presentation and it is virtual. So as many of you, we're all working kind of a new normal, so we appreciate your feedback and support. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Catherine Key.
Hello, it's nice to see a few faces and have more than email. So in this session, the participants will have reviewed the TPE data submission process, examined the file requirements, and discussed the updates for the 2019-2020 school year. As a reminder, the TPE data elements collected by the state are grouped into different categories: the identifiers, the measures, and overall effectiveness. The identifiers, starting last year, have changed into hopefully being the state-assigned teacher ID from the unique teacher identifier system, the school code, and the LSS code. No names or other personal information about the teacher or principal should be included in the data upload. All school systems must report the effectiveness rating as highly effective, effective, or ineffective. Systems may also use an effectiveness rating of developing. The measures are split into professional practice and student growth, and student growth also includes whole school measures. For professional practice and student growth, please provide a summary score and summary rating in addition to the general measures. So moving along, our general timeline occurs in 3 phases. The first phase is data submission, what we're currently preparing for, where the teacher and principal files are submitted to MSDE via a secure server. The files must be submitted through the server. No files should be submitted through email or other non-secure channels. The teacher submission window starts June 26th and ends July 31st. These are the last Fridays of June and July. And the principal window starts August 14th and ends September 11th, the second Fridays of August and September. Once the data is received, we begin the cleaning and validation process, and this continues until the end of October. This is the time where I'll be in contact with your teams if I have any questions about the data that has been submitted. Then, starting in November, a summary report is being prepared by the MSDE to be completed in January of 2021. This slide shows a screenshot of the secure server login page. You must have a valid user ID and password. It is fine for only one member of the team to have access. But if your team does need access to the server, please contact me at catherine.key@maryland.gov. After you log into the secure server, you can access your LSS's TPE folders. The folder name uses the state-assigned LSS number to differentiate them. For example, Baltimore County is 03 and its folder name is SF-TPE-LSS03. There are 2 subfolders once you get into your LSS's TPE folder. The to MSDE folder, which is what we're going to be using heavily in the near future, and the from MSDE folder. The files are submitted through the to MSDE folder. Any that are sent back can be accessed through the from MSDE folder. To upload, you can drag and drop the files from their location in your file explorer, or you can click the upload button and navigate to the file. To download, you can click on the file name under the name column, or can right-click on the file and select download. The teacher and principal evaluation data collection manual includes revisions to the 2018-2019 manual, submission deadlines and guidelines, updates, definitions, and the teacher and principal data layout. The manual, together with the sample teacher and principal data files, were shared in May. A link of the materials is in the chat. 2019, 2020 has been crazy, and so we've made several adjustments to try and accommodate those changes in the data. And as we were making these changes, we did reach out and collaborate with a few partners. The first set of changes is that there are codes for the evaluation measures to capture the effects of school closures. In particular, this is applicable if the LSS may have elected to waive a student growth measure due to the waiver passed on April 28th by the school board. And there's an additional category in the type variables for the measure to indicate if it was not used specifically due to the waiver. The second set of changes is that there are several new variables to capture changes to the evaluation process. In addition, we've decided to make checking for missing data and true zeros easier. All fields should be filled with either the appropriate data or the text null instead of being blank filled, which was used last year. Lastly, just a change of terminology to match the ESSA terminology. We've changed from local education agency in the documentation and variable names to local school system. So we went over some of that pretty fast, but this time I'll pause for questions. We will be going through a lot of these changes and samples in later slides. We are going to continue using the comma-separated values file format that got instituted last year. As a reminder, this is different from the XLSX format, which is the traditional Excel workbook. The suggested file name is TPE underscore teacher or principal based on the file, underscore 2020 underscore LSS, and then your LSS code. So for example, using Baltimore County again, this would be TPE underscore teacher underscore 2020 underscore LSS 03 if it was the teacher data. Replace teacher with principal if it's the principal data. This is not required, but it would assist in identifying and organizing the submitted data. Please make sure to include the variable headers provided in the sample files so we can be sure which evaluation measures are being used for the educator. Just gonna pause here really quick and show a reiteration of the data windows. So again, it is opening on June 26th for teachers and closes July 31st. The principal window then opens August 14th and closes September 11th. So getting into some of the meat of the changes, all missing or null data is to be filled with the text null. So this means if a variable is unused, it's going to be treated as null. And this means that every variable that your district isn't using, please still include and fill with null. In addition, for example, if a principal is not being evaluated on the mission, vision, and values P cell this year, then fill both the points earned and the model points for the vision and values with the text null. We will show an example of this later. There must be a separate record for each educator. No single measure should represent more than 35% of the entire model. This particularly comes into play with the waiver. For example, if your district was using two different student growth measures before the waiver and had assigned 50% of the model to student growth, if you're now using student growth as a single measure, you should not assign the full 50% to the remaining student growth measures.
In addition, the sum of points must be equal to 100, and the sum of points earned must be less than or equal to 100.
Continuing on, this and the following 30 slides are referencing specific tables found in the collection manual. This particular slide is Table 3, the teacher record layout, which lists the requirements of the teacher data points and is on pages 8 through 13 of the collection manual. Please, when you're doing your reporting, use the HEDI format for the effectiveness ratings. If a field name is marked in green, this is a new or modified field. This portion of the table is on pages 15 and 16. In this extract, we can see 3 of the new variables, as well as an example of where the codes to indicate student growth measures were waived. can be reported. At the very bottom of the screen is the code to show that you waived a student learning outcome 1. It's going to be in the outcome type field. In this case, you'd report a 6 if you would waive student learning outcome 1, and you report null for all other student learning outcome 1 fields. It will not always be 6 for the different student growth measures, but it will always be the last code listed in the description. The 3 new variables here are the virtual observations, in-person observations, and the assignment of professional practice rating. These are there to capture any changes to the amount or method of observations, as well as the assignment of the overall professional practice rating. In this record layout, there are 5 columns. The first one is the field name, and is the name of the data element, such as virtual observations or LSS or school number. The second column is the identifier. This is what the header in the CSV file will be, which we're going to be going over soon, usually an abbreviated version of the field name. The third column is the type column, so data can be either numeric or character. The fourth column is the description, and this will list all possible answers for the character data. The fifth column provides notes about specific recording requirements or the limits and/or range of the data field. Continuing on, this slide shows the principal record layout, which is table 4 on pages 14 through 20. The specific portion can be found on page 20, and it shows the additional variables very similar to the assignment of professional practice, just now it's for student growth and total effectiveness rating. I did see a question pop up in the chat. Are principals expected to conduct virtual observations? This is something where we're trying to account for in case this might happen. This is something that has to be agreed on with the local bargaining unit and at the discretion of your district. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Moving on, the first table on page 6 is the data definitions. And so it goes through and describes several types of the variables in more detail. Remember that the student outcome type fields are where you'll have the opportunity to indicate if the measure was originally in the local evaluation model and has been removed due to the waiver. There is an additional table of data definitions for school closure specific variables on page 7. Our office recognizes that circumstances are different, and we reached out for feedback to try and account for these changes. Now for possibly the ugliest slide ever, but bear with me. These are sample excerpts of the data that are difficult to capture in a slide, so thank you for your patience. The 2 CSV files containing these same sample records for teachers and principals were shared along with the manual, and they're also in that link in the chat. So if a certain P cell is not used, then make sure to fill both the percent model and the earned points fields with null. We're going to focus on the P cell mission, vision, and value to sort of walk through an example of this. The columns are now circled in purple. So for example, the principal in the second row, now outlined in orange, did not have mission, vision, and value as part of their evaluation. So it's filled with null for both the percent model and the points earned field, now circled in green. Then for teachers, we're going to focus on the LSS Professional Practice 2, circled in purple. The teacher in the fourth row, now circled in orange, did not use the LSS Professional Practice 2, so is filled with percent model and points earned field is null. The last thing we're going to do with this slide is look at the assignment of professional practice summary rating and how that relates to the virtual and in-person observations. So if all the observations were completed before the closure, such as for the fourth teacher, then the assignment code is a 1 saying they completed the original model. If, like the first teacher, 1 was a virtual observation and 1 was an in-person observation, then it's completed but modified, getting a 2 for the field. There are several other codes for this field to try and capture everything the systems may have been using, such as if they used 1 observation from this year and 1 from the previous year, they did a default effectiveness rating. We really did try and capture everything you might need. So the last slide of primary content. We're going to discuss some of the common errors in the data file that have been seen in previous years. In particular, the SLOs and P-cell standard scores occasionally have missing variables. The main example of this is reporting the total student growth rating in the fields for SLO1 and not reporting any of the SLO or other student growth measures data. Also, there are occasionally out of range values. So for some of the variables, the earned points reported with value greater than the maximum points in the model. For example, back to our P-cell of mission, vision, and value, sometimes it is reported that the maximum total points is 10, but the points earned is 12. Lastly, the sum of points earned sometimes don't equal the reported total points earned. So if you sum up all the columns, it doesn't equal the number reported at the end. And also, sometimes the total model points are not equal to 100 in the reported data. A feedback survey will be shown on the next slide. Thank you for your participation. This webinar will be made available on the Maryland Resource Hub. There's a QR code for the survey on the slide. We would greatly appreciate if you could fill it out. At this time, you're free to leave, but we'll stay on the line for a few more minutes to answer any remaining questions.
And we do have 2 questions in the chat if you would like to answer those at this time.
So from Lisa, I hope I said that right. In our model, when some of the components are missing, available components are reweighted, which can cause confusion. We summarize these rules in our cover letter and can talk offline. Okay, thank you for the information. And then their name isn't listed, but if a district has elected to waive student growth component, how does the loss of the points impact our total 100 points? So traditionally, the way I think of the model is that essentially it's a percentage and the weight if you've elected to waive all student growth measures. But originally you had the 12.5 for each of the 4 teacher professional standards. Now it'd be a 25% each is the general thinking that I have. And I'd be happy to discuss in more detail with your specific situation at the office hours tomorrow or offline.
Again, we would like to thank you for joining us today.